much, Honorable Mashakada, our Secretary General. I want to recognize the Chairman of the Movement for Democratic Change, Baba Fox Chikonero, the Presidential Spokesperson, Lloyd Bamba. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, welcome to this press conference. And I want to thank you for heeding to our call at short notice. Before I start, I would like on behalf of the NDC to send our heartfelt condolences to the families of the people who perished in the recent National Railways disaster. May God Almighty be with them in this moment of grief. We would also want to send our heartfelt condolences to the people of Namibia on the passing on of their president, His Excellency Hague Geingob. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe is in a dire situation. Most of our people are wallowing in poverty, misery, and deprivation. Because of the poor farming season, most people are now experiencing food shortages. Some rural communities have resorted to selling their livestock at ridiculously low prices in order to obtain grain. Unemployment remains high, and those fortunate to be employed have their conditions very, very appalling. Many workers in the private sector are going for months without wages, while for civil servants, the wages remain ridiculously low, such that they cannot afford the basic necessities of life. To compound this, our people remain subjected to poor service delivery at both the national and local government level. Our hospitals remain death traps, providing virtually nothing. In state hospitals and other health centers, our people are made to pay for anything from bandages to painkillers simply because these are not available. The poor service delivery in the urban councils have reduced our urban areas into a health hazard, with conditions being made ripe for such diseases as cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and other waterborne diseases. Because of poverty, most parents are unable to send their children to school. Current reports show that over 500,000 pupils are out of school because of this problem. The right to education that is so well enunciated in our constitution has become a preserve of the rich, powerful, and the privileged. The free fall of the Zimbabwean dollar continues unchecked and unabated, making the local currency one of the worst currencies in the world. The current government is doing absolutely nothing meaningful to support small to medium enterprises. It is not providing any economic support to women, the youth, the people living with disabilities, as well as minorities, as a way of including them into the mainstream economy. The inclusion of these groups and sectors is in our economy is a sine qua non to the economic development and revival of our country. Our God-given resources, especially minerals like gold, platinum, and lithium, are largely being exploited and enjoyed by foreigners with the help of a few greedy and corrupt local officials. The high levels of inequality exacerbated by corruption and poverty have eliminated the middle class in Zimbabwe. Thus, Zimbabwe has become a country of two nations in one. The country remains internationally isolated, with no prospects of immediate removal of sanctions. Our chances of rejoining the Commonwealth have become more and more remote. Sadly for Zimbabwe, the parliament that it elected is not producing any checks and balances. In fact, it has been reduced to a one-party rubber-stamping parliament, as both sets of parliamentarians are acting incompetently but in unison. Two sad developments are unfolding in our country. There appears to be a program to remove people and demolish their dwellings in communal areas. This seems to emanate from a misunderstanding of the law. In terms of the law, the communal land vests in the president. He holds it in trust on behalf of the people. He does not own it. So contrary to the assertions by many people in ZANU PF, the land does not belong to the president. It belongs to the people. He simply holds it in trust. If the demolitions are not stopped immediately and completely, it will constitute Murambachina number 2. The second problem that is developing are caused by ZANU PF people that President Mnangagwa must get a third term. These calls have been made at official ZANU PF stages. Our constitution is very, very clear that a president serves a maximum of 2 terms of 5 years each. It makes it clear that any proposed amendments to extend term limits must be via a referendum. And even if the referendum succeeds, the president, the incumbent, shall not benefit from that extension. These calls are an affront to our democracy. They dent our image as a constitutional democracy. Further, it will cement the unfortunate international image that Zimbabwe has gained as a pariah state. This will never end our international isolation. In the interest of the nation, and given the current political developments in our country, the MDC has formed a shadow cabinet. This is because the opposition in Parliament has refused, failed, or neglected to form a shadow cabinet. This shadow cabinet will man mark and woman mark the current cabinet and hold it accountable. It will focus on developing and articulating alternative policies that are basically pro-poor and pro-people. The MDC therefore demands A, that ZANU PF should honor the national constitution and stop any efforts to desecrate the constitution. B, that President Mnangagwa himself, as the first upholder of the national constitution, must clearly and unequivocally reject any calls that he should go for the third term. He must do it himself. And C, that the conditions of all workers, including civil servants, must be redressed as a matter of urgency, and that all workers must be given a living wage. D, excessive taxation of our people must stop. E, school fees for children from grade 1 to Form 4 must be scrapped altogether. And F, hospital fees must be scrapped. The bleeding, which is G, the bleeding of our mineral wealth by foreigners must be halted. And lastly, adequate service delivery by local authorities must be rendered. In this regard, we learn that the Veru City Council has now imposed night claiming, so vehicles can be claimed at night. This is ridiculous. We call upon the CCC to rein in on its councillors. The MDC remains a true vanguard of the people and Zimbabwe's government in waiting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in accordance with our resolutions, we have appointed a shadow cabinet. You will notice that this shadow cabinet is slightly bigger than the current cabinet. This is because it is not drawing from the national fiscus. We are not drawing from the taxpayers' money. But when we get into government, our cabinet will be much, much smaller. Let me just read for you the names of the men and women who constitute our shadow cabinet. Secretary Minister for Finance and Economic Development, Dr. Tapua Mashakada. The Minister of International Relations and Diaspora Affairs, Ambassador Ebson Makuvise. Dr. Mashakada was Minister of Economic Development during the inclusive government. He is an economist by profession. Ambassador Makuvise was our ambassador during the inclusive government into Germany. The Minister of Mines and Minerals Development is Honorable Wazisibanda from Matebele North. She is a miner. The Minister of Transport, Energy and Power Development is Honorable Teti Banda. She is a former MP for Midlands Province. The Secretary for ICT is Mr. Aaron Makahamadze. He is an engineer by profession, employed by one of the service providers in our country. The Secretary for the Minister for Information and Publicity is Mr. Lloyd Damba, who is our current presidential spokesperson. The Minister for Labor, Public Service and Social Welfare is our Vice President, Paulina Mpariwa. She is former Minister of Public Service during the inclusive government. She doubles as Vice President and the Minister of Labor, Public Service and Social Welfare. The Minister of Education is Honorable Nomalanga Kumalo from Matebeleland South. She is a former Deputy Speaker of Parliament. The Minister for Health and Child Care is Honorable Constance Chihururu. This is one of the most underestimated women within the country. She is the former MP for Manicaland, and she is a nurse by training. She was trained in Mozambique. Actually, she's proficient in Portuguese. She was trained in Mozambique and Finland. The Minister of Youth and Sport is Cheneso Jack. Cheneso Jack is a former national champion, athletics champion in Zimbabwe. At one point in time, she beat the celebrated Julia Sakala in one of the competitions. She has many gold medals to her credit, and she is our member from the Midlands. Our Minister of Defense and Security is Solomon Sox Chikowero. Mr. Chikowero is a soldier by training, military man by training, and is currently our national chairperson. The Minister of Tourism and National Heritage, Honorable Spiwe Banda from Mashonaland East. She is a long-serving member of the MTC as well as a businesswoman. Our Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs is Brian Dube, Honorable Brian Dube, former Member of Parliament for Midlands, Weru Eben. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change is Honorable Yvonne Msarurwa. Yvonne Msarurwa was the portfolio chair of this portfolio committee in Parliament in the last Parliament. She is one of our youngest officials. The Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education is Dr. Julius Msewenzi. Dr. Julius Msevenzi is a lecturer at the University of Zimbabwe and our current Deputy Secretary General, deputizing Dr. Tapiwa Mashakada. Our Minister for Women and Gender Affairs is Honorable Dorothy Molinjovu. Honorable Njovu is our current Secretary, Chair Lady of the Women's Assembly. Minister of Small and Medium Enterprises and Community Development is Councillor Tendai Kokera. She is the former mayor of Kadoma City. The Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Rural Development is one of our most dedicated women within the MDC. She's the organizing secretary of the Women's Assembly, Honorable Nometa Munyai. The Minister of Local Government, Devolution, Planning and Development is Honorable Tangwara Matimba. He holds qualifications in rural and urban planning from the University of Zimbabwe and is our former MP for Buhera Central. Minister of War Veterans, National Peace and Reconciliation. So we have married war veterans to national peace and reconciliation. He is our former minister or deputy minister, veteran trade unionist, Gift Chimani Kire. Minister of National Housing and Infrastructure Development, a young man from the province of Masvingo, former teacher, former council worker, Boniface Mazarire. Secretary for Industry and Commerce is a businessman of note, and the former Deputy Chief Whip in Parliament, David Tekeshe. We have that completes the first set of the cabinet ministers. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a cabinet of 23. Out of the 23, we have 12 men and 11 women. We have appointed shadow resident ministers, ministers for provincial affairs and devolution. The idea is for them to shadow the current ministers of state for devolution and provincial affairs. So in Manicaland, we have Mrs. Aquilina Chapanya, the current deputy chairperson of Manicaland. In Masvingo, we have Stephen Modereri. He is the current chairperson of Masvingo province. We have divided Midlands into Midlands North and Midlands South in accordance with the constitution of the MDC and for the easy administration of these portfolios. Midlands North, we have Miss Mesiranga, who is a former deputy mayor of Kwekwe. For Harare, our minister is Mr. Rhino Mashaya. Rhino Mashaya is our Secretary for Security and our long service member of the Harare province. Bulawayo, our minister there is Miss Marilyn Ndiweni. She is a former senator in the parliament. Midlands South, as I said, we divided Midlands into Midlands North and Midlands South. We have Councillor Mutendi Kombai. Councillor Kombai is former mayor of Bero, as you all know. Midlands, Matebeleland North, we have Miss Chenyani Chesha. She is our chair lady of the Women's Assembly there. In Matebeleland South, we have a young man called Gianni Dube, a very, very solid young man who is into farming. In Mashonaland Central, we have Miss Sauke January. Miss Sauke January is a former MP for Mashonaland Central Province. In Mashonaland East, we have Miss Jane Chifamba. She is a long-serving she's a long-serving member of the party and a former senator for Mashonaland East. And then Chitungwiza, Rua, and Norton. We have Mr. Charles Nyayeka. Mr. Charles Nyayeka is the spokesperson of Chitungwiza province. He is a business person. Mashonaland West, we have Miss Violet Moketsi. Miss Moketsi is the current chairperson of the MDC for Mashonaland West Province. She is a former senator in the parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, on the shadow ministers for provincial affairs, we have 5 men and 7 women. What this shows, ladies and gentlemen, is the seriousness with which MDC looks at the issue of gender equality. Now, these shadow ministers are going to be the most active people within the MDC. There are people whom we have made to remain at the party to do important work at the party. And you don't see their names here, but they are very, very competent people and very, very able people. You will see their work as time goes on. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our statement to you as members of the press. And we want to advise that our staff are going to make available both the press statement and the list of the shadow ministers. Thank you very much.